Before you keep watching, try this. What did you eat for dinner 3 nights ago? Take a second, really think about it. If you struggled to remember, don't panic. Most people can't. But here's what's interesting. It's not always just normal forgetfulness. There's a silent habit that millions of people repeat every single day. And over time, it slowly weakens your memory. The strange part? It doesn't feel harmful at all. In fact, it feels convenient. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Stay with me, because in a moment, I'm going to show you a simple habit, something that takes less than 2 minutes a day. That can help you protect and even strengthen your memory over time. But first, let me tell you a quick story. Meet David. David is 34. He's sharp, focused, and always busy. Like most people, his day is packed. Messages, calls, scrolling, reminders. His phone is basically his second brain. At first, nothing seemed off. He would forget small things occasionally. Why he walked into a room, where he left his keys. A name he just heard. Normal, right? That's exactly what he thought. Until one day, something different happened. He had a conversation with a colleague in the morning. A full conversation, details, decisions, everything. But by the afternoon, he couldn't remember it clearly. Not just one detail. Almost the entire thing felt blurry. That moment stayed with him, because it didn't feel normal anymore. But here's the twist. David wasn't doing anything unusual. He wasn't sleep-deprived, he wasn't sick, he wasn't doing anything extreme. He was just living a normal, modern life. And that's what makes this so important. Because the real problem isn't obvious. It's not something you notice immediately. It builds slowly, quietly, in the background. And most people don't connect the dots. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain is designed to remember, but it's also designed to adapt. If you stop using certain functions, it starts to reduce effort in those areas. Think of it like a muscle. If you use it regularly, it stays strong. If you don't, it weakens over time. Now, here's where things get interesting. In today's world, we've made life incredibly convenient. You don't need to remember phone numbers anymore. You don't need to recall directions. You don't even need to remember simple tasks. Your phone does it for you. Reminders, notes, search, notifications, everything is handled externally. At first, it feels like a benefit. Less stress, less effort, more efficiency. But over time, your brain starts to notice something. It starts to realize, I don't need to remember this anymore. And slowly, without you noticing, it begins to step back. This is what we call outsourcing your memory. Instead of actively recalling information, you rely on devices to do it for you. And the more you do this, the less your brain practices remembering. Now, this doesn't mean technology is bad. That's not the point. The problem is balance. Because when your brain is constantly in a passive state, just consuming information without recalling it, your memory pathways don't get reinforced. And over time, that can make recall feel harder, slower, less reliable. And here's the part most people miss. It's not about age. A lot of people assume memory decline only happens later in life, but small changes can start much earlier, based on daily habits. That's why this matters. Not because something is wrong, but because something is being neglected. Now, here's the good news. This is one of the few things that is surprisingly easy to improve. You don't need anything expensive. You don't need complicated routines. You just need to start using your memory again, intentionally. And in a moment, I'll show you exactly how to do that. A simple habit that can begin to reverse this passive pattern. But before we get there, there's one important shift you need to understand. Memory isn't about intelligence. It's not about being naturally smart or having a good brain. It's about usage. The people who stay mentally sharp for years, even decades, aren't necessarily different. They just use their memory differently. Instead of always relying on external tools, they engage their brain more often. They recall, they repeat, they reconstruct information, and that makes a huge difference because every time you try to remember something, you're strengthening a pathway. You're telling your brain, This matters. Keep this active. On the other hand, every time you skip that process and go straight to your phone, you're telling your brain the opposite. This isn't important. Don't worry about it. Now imagine repeating that pattern every day, for months, for years. You can start to see how it adds up. And this is exactly what was happening to David. Not overnight, not dramatically, just small, consistent habits that slowly shifted how his brain was functioning. But once he understood this, everything started to change, because the solution wasn't complicated. It was simple. And that's what we're getting into next. So, what exactly did David change? It wasn't something complicated. It wasn't a supplement. It wasn't a program. It wasn't a complete lifestyle overhaul. It was one simple habit, something he could do anywhere, at any time, without any tools. It's called daily recall. Here's how it works. At the end of each day, or even at a quiet moment, you take just a couple of minutes, and you ask yourself a few simple questions. What did I do today? Who did I speak to? What did I learn? What happened this morning? And here's the key part. You don't check your phone, you don't look at your notes, you don't rely on anything external. You let your brain do the work. At first, it might feel surprisingly difficult. You might pause, struggle, even feel like your mind is blank. That's normal, because for a long time, the brain hasn't needed to do this. It's been used to receiving information, not retrieving it. But something powerful happens when you stick with it. Every time you try to recall something, your brain starts rebuilding those connections. It starts strengthening the pathways that were being ignored. And slowly, recall becomes easier, clearer, faster, more natural. This is what makes the habit so effective. It's simple, but it directly targets the root of the problem. Not by adding more information, but by training your brain to use what it already has. When David started doing this, the first few days felt frustrating. He couldn't remember much. His thoughts felt scattered, but he stayed consistent. Just 2 minutes a day. No pressure, no perfection. And within a couple of weeks, he noticed something subtle. He didn't need to check his phone as often. He started remembering small details again. Conversations felt clearer. Names stuck more easily. It wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. And over time, those small improvements added up. Because consistency is what changes the brain, not intensity. Now, if you want to take this a step further, there are a few simple ways to make this even more effective. The first is something you can do immediately. Before you reach for your phone to check something, pause for a second. And try to remember it first. If you're about to search for a name, see if you can recall it. If you're about to check what you planned earlier, try to reconstruct it in your mind. Even if you don't get it right, the act of trying is what matters, because that's what activates your memory. Another simple habit is repeating names during conversations. When you meet someone new or hear a name, repeat it once or twice in your mind, or even out loud, naturally. This creates a stronger connection. It signals to your brain, this is important, keep it. You can also use idle moments. When you're waiting, walking, or just sitting quietly, instead of reaching for your phone, mentally replay part of your day. What happened earlier? What did you do in the morning? What stood out? These small moments are powerful opportunities to train your memory, and they don't require extra time, just a shift in awareness. Now, here's something important to understand. This isn't about being perfect. You're not trying to remember everything. You're simply rebuilding a habit that your brain was designed for. Because the more you practice recall, the more natural it becomes. And over time, your brain adapts. It starts holding on to information more easily because it expects you to use it. That's the difference. You're no longer telling your brain, this doesn't matter. You're telling it, I'm going to need this. And that changes how it responds. This is why some people seem to stay mentally sharp for so long. It's not luck. It's not genetics alone. It's daily behavior. Small, repeated actions that keep the brain engaged. Now think about this for a second. Every day, you're either strengthening your memory or slowly letting it weaken. Not through big decisions, but through small, repeated habits. Choosing to recall or choosing to rely, choosing to think or choosing to scroll. And over time, those choices shape how your brain performs. This is what makes the difference. Not what you do once in a while, but what you do every single day. So the next time you forget something, don't just brush it off. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time I actually challenged my memory? Because in today's world, it's very easy to stop doing that. Everything is designed to be instant, to be effortless, to be done for you. But your brain still needs engagement. It still needs effort, not constant effort, just small, consistent moments of use. And the best part is, you can start immediately. Tonight, before you go to bed, take 2 minutes, sit quietly, and try to recall your day. No pressure, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. At first, it might feel difficult. That's okay. That's where the growth starts. Because every time you do it, you're training your brain to stay active, to stay engaged, to stay sharp. And over time, that becomes your new normal. So instead of asking, why am I forgetting things? You start asking, how often am I using my memory? Because that's where the real answer is. And once you understand that, you're no longer just reacting to forgetfulness. You're actively shaping your brain, one small habit at a time. And if you found this helpful, there's something else you should know. There's another everyday habit that's quietly affecting your focus and mental clarity. Most people do it without even thinking, and it might be impacting you more than you realize. So make sure you watch the next video, because once you see it, you won't look at your daily routine the same way again.